Kate Milafalcha. Welcome back to Irish Granny Tarot. We're continuing with our Saturday book. This is part 5 of In Plain Sight by Ross Coulthart. And just to put you on alert, if I run out of space and my video stops abruptly, never fear, I'll be back. And I apologize if it's an unfriendly Irish goodbye, but you know, technology. Let's keep our fingers crossed. Everybody put out the good vibes. So, video number 5, we're starting with chapter 18, Art's Parts. So this is a story to tell. In 74, before his death, a grandfather told his family that he'd been on a retrieval team at Roswell and that there were 2 dead ETs, a saucer, and a survivor. The corpses were sent to Wright-Patterson, of course, famous. The craft was hit by a meteor, and it chose to not escape because if it had escaped, it would have obliterated New Mexico, Arizona, California, and parts of Mexico because of its technology. And they interrogated the survivor for 26 weeks. Then he put him on a plane to D.C. I hope he didn't have to sit in third class. The plane and the occupants vanished. The plane scrambled to investigate. Planes were scrambled to investigate the distress signals that had been set out from this plane. And they never found any trace. They said that they had serious electrical malfunctions going on. They reported and then they disappeared. In 96, the grandson joined the U.S. Army. And he had a box of souvenirs from Roswell that his grandfather had given him that included his grandfather's diary. He wrote to Art Bell. And he said that I agree, in his letter, I agree with Neil Armstrong. He sent metal samples to Bell. And he also sent diary pages he copied and sent. Bell got together with Linda Moulton Howe, and they investigated this stuff. So is this baloney? The Army could easily trace somebody in the military today whose grandfather was at Roswell. It wouldn't be that hard for them. So was this disinformation? Howe got the metal part tested and said it was pure aluminum, and it looked like a car radiator part from the early 20th century. But they also had new samples of some sort of UFO skin that seemed to be an unknown process that manufactured it. So this Army sergeant, grandson, had inadvertently learned enough and leaked enough info to Bell to be easily identified by the Army. And so was all of this a tall tale? Ross's big question. His claims of a plane crash killing a friend with Roswell samples was debunked. He claimed he had a friend that he gave samples to. The friend took this on a plane and then the plane crashed and the friend died. But that was debunked because if they had followed the chronology of his story, the friend would have been way too young to be traveling alone by plane with the military. So he'd have been too young and the story was nonsense. So does that mean everything he said is nonsense? Skeptics say that samples are not unique, that these samples are not unique and not rare, and there are major holes in his story. However, in 2019, the Army announced that it was investigating the samples. So why were they taking this seriously? If they're in the Army and they know nothing happened, why are they wasting time and money? This was done under CRADA, the Cooperative Research and Development Agreement. The Army would analyze, this is the agreement, the Army would analyze what DeLong's group to the Stars Academy provided to them that they got from Linda Moulton Howe and Art Bell, who got them from the grandson. Grandson gave them to them, gave them to Art Bell. He called in Linda. They studied it. They gave it to DeLong's group. DeLong's group shared it with the Army. The Army would pay for the testing. And it was like Star Trek. Like what was going on here? The claims about this technology was like Star Trek. The departure of major scientists from DeLong's group didn't bode well for the samples or for the claims of DeLong that anti-gravity had been discovered, that the government had ET and UFO stuff and technical ability. Why would the government be testing stuff from DeLong? It's crazy. Stuff that is questionable and is a waste of money if what the Army and military, well, what the entire government claims is false. So is there a way for the government maybe to launder its secret anti-gravity discoveries made from back engineering UFOs that the government has already by letting DeLong discover them and thereby avoiding the whole issue of their black programs and decades-long lies? You following this? Linda Moulton Howe has claimed that the samples have anti-gravity properties. DeLong told Rogan the same thing. His Academy scientists and Elizondo hinted at the same thing, but they can't come out and say it directly because they've taken oaths. Mellon admitted that some materials had extraordinary properties and different isotope ratios from anything on Earth. Were they on purpose manipulating in the service of a story to set DeLong's Academy up at I can't read my writing. That they were going to do the exposing of the story. Or did this stuff really come from UFOs? So Mellon asked this question. Are they going to let him do the disclosure thing and let him take the credit so they don't get blamed for their lies? The U.S. Army seemed ready to give this whole thing credibility. They were going to assay this metal. But all these famous scientists started backing out of DeLong's group. Why? Was it because of the samples? We don't know. It's a lot we're not being told about what the Army and his Academy arranged to do together. Chapter 19, the new science of metamaterials. And this is, I skipped some of the physics of this because it gave me a headache and I didn't think you guys wanted me to, ruin my health. So I'm going to do my best. It's complicated. So this metamaterials is a new field. Their properties don't come from their content, their metallic content. They come from their design, whatever that means. So, can they be manipulated by electronic or electromagnetic radiation? In other words, they're saying that they can shoot these things they can zap them and have cloaking devices like something out of Harry Potter. They can also be used to manipulate gravity and create a new form of propulsion. The samples, the early tests weren't adequate. They needed Army equipment when they did them themselves, DeLong's group. And in one theory, Ross suspects the Army would do the tests and then tell DeLong his samples were alien with anti-gravity property. And the other theory is the Army would discover that it's true and shut DeLong up. It just depends on what their long-term agenda is. In 1951, the Invention Secrecy Act was written, and it lets governments keep sensitive information secret by refusing patents to inventors and silencing the inventor. In 2019, 5,878 such orders were in effect, shutting people up. Why was the Army agreeing to investigate with DeLong something it's only sworn recently doesn't exist? DeLong's group claims that the government has their samples as well as other unidentified samples to test. But the government said there's no UFOs. So what's DeLong talking about? Why is the government testing DeLong's stuff? Do they have their own samples? Where are they from? What the heck is going on? So why would they let DeLong's group know and be involved in this testing? Why would they tell this rock star? Well, rock singer. There were always grounds to be skeptical about the Academy, Star Academy, even before you consider this deal with the Army. While Rockstar DeLong is the CEO, the rest of the company was and still is largely made up of spooks, most of them with connections to the CIA. Jim Semovin, who remains on the board and is still vice president of operations, is a former senior operations officer and former trainer for the CIA's Directorate of Clandestine Operations. Hal Puthoff worked for the NSA and the CIA. Luis Elizondo was a former career counterintelligence officer with the Defense Department who worked most recently out of the Office of the Director of National Intelligence. Chris Mellon was a former Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for Intelligence. The advisory board member, Chris Herden, is also ex-Defense Department. Norm Kahn, also on the advisory board, is a 33-year CIA veteran decorated with the Spy Agency's Intelligence Medal. The final advisory board member, Dr. Paul Rapp, has a CIA Certificate of Commendation. These guys are all career military defense and intelligence. This is a public benefit company, top-heavy with black world spies, which claims it wants to develop supposed alien technology for profit with the U.S. Army's help, and with punk rocker as its frontman. Seriously, what could possibly go wrong? Okay. In describing the material that they had, they posted stock photos, but the stock photos were of pieces of malachite. Claims about the UFO origins of the samples were made before. Different UFO samples had been made before in Brazil in 97 from events that actually happened in 54 to 57, collected, kept in Brazil, and revealed in 97. And we were told they were not earthly isotopes. But in 2020, they were retested and found to be from the Earth. Elizondo was cautious to say we can't be sure about all samples, but then he made huge claims about some of the samples. The research has not been published. Elizondo went on Tucker Carlson, the good old days when Tucker Carlson was on TV. They exist, he says, but what are they and where are they from, aliens? The U.S. government is in possession of stuff. Elizondo was evasive because of his security oath clearances. So when he was asked directly, does the U.S. government have UFO debris? His answer was yes. And this is at odds with the highest government officials, including the president, but no one has rebutted him and called him a liar. Dr. Eric Davis, the former Bigelow National Institute of Discovery Science guy, says Elizondo is 1,000% accurate. His NDA prevents further truth or further discussion, but the government has recovered crashed and landed UFO technology hardware. Not proven, but he's working on classified government projects right now in the aerospace industry. No problem. Now, Dr. Eric Davis has come out and said the government has secret alien retrieval programs, bodies, spaceships, technology they're working on. Unequivocally, he said that publicly. And he has top secret clearance and he's still working on government projects in aerospace. Before this, Davis said, before he took his non-disclosure thing, he said in the New York Times that the U.S. government has stuff we couldn't make from off-world vehicles, not of this earth. Why is there so little media interest? This is what baffles me. It's not even on headlines. As author and journalist Leslie Kean told Scientific American, I find it astonishing that there are still some scientists who adopt the position that it can't be, therefore it isn't. I don't have that choice because I've witnessed many paranormal phenomena myself, and I know they exist. Those who don't want to believe these things will dismiss them no matter what they read, and they're unlikely to open themselves up to their own encounters with these phenomena. And remember, it's been said, a lot of it depends on your willingness. Chapter 20, The Astronaut and the Spaceman. Astronauts have been American heroes, especially those who made it to the moon. James Rigney, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, is an Australian architect and a space fan, a buff, of the space program. He flew to a U.S. space conference in 2013 and got right in the middle of a UFO controversy. And he says he's not a UFO obsessive. He admired and respected Edgar Mitchell. He had clashed with local Melbourne space research associates who harshly criticized Mitchell's post-NASA investigation of UFOs and the paranormal. Mitchell made no secret of it after he was out of NASA. Briefly, Rigney met Mitchell in 2012 at the 40th anniversary of the Apollo 17. In 2013, he went to the Tucson Space Fest. This guy really, he has a lot of fun. He went to the Tucson Space Fest, and over drinks, he told a fellow attendee his great admiration for Dr. Mitchell, just in passing. He didn't know who this guy was. Turns out, this guy, who's now called the Spaceman because he wants to stay anonymous, was a very close friend of Mitchell, and he introduced Rigney to Mitchell. The Spaceman made sure Rigney got the chance to have a long chat with his hero. What an honor to meet and spend time with this great man, Rigney told Ross, our author. Dr. Mitchell's work in both space exploration and the nature of human consciousness transcended conventional science as we know it. It was humbling to talk to a giant of science and exploration about how he felt our science and religious understanding had it all wrong. Mitchell died in February of 2016, and before he died, he revealed things to his friend, the Spaceman, and to others. Ross our author, met with the Spaceman, and he says his home was a shrine to the early space program, and he will keep him anonymous out of respect. Mitchell often expressed the view that there was very strong evidence that we're visited by sentient life from what? Other dimensions? Space? He didn't know. He didn't presume. Robert Bigelow had him on the advisory board of the NIDS. Mitchell's interest was because, and this is I just love this, his hometown was Artesia, New Mexico, just down the road from Roswell. And the locals that he knew very well told him that Roswell was real and the government was covering it up. Most only told him because he was a hometown hero, and they knew him and they trusted him. A lot of them talked to him and never talked to anybody else. He was shown debris that people had, including that memory metal where you crunch it up like a piece of aluminum foil and you crunch it up and you open your hand and it's a ball of wrinkled paper and it unfolds itself and spreads itself out into a completely smooth sheet again. I've heard this story over and over from different sources. Mitchell accused the government of a cover-up. They were very polite to him because he's honored, but they denied it. The overview effect is the transcendent experience of seeing the earth from a distance, from afar. And Mitchell said that this made him question our origins and our purpose. That perhaps science has it wrong and religion is archaic and flawed. Perhaps. We need to work to find answers. He told the Spaceman, his good friend, they saw many anomalous objects in space, and he believed the space missions closely were watched by intelligent, guided craft of unknown origin. Boom. Edgar Mitchell. I've said this a million times to family and friends, and they look at me like I'm nuts. So it's true that he said these things. It's true that his closest friends claim he said these things. Let's put it that way. Now, he's gone on the record with a lot of people. He saw strange objects with his own eyes. For example, a blue light on an unidentified craft, and you can see it in NASA photos behind him. And they try to say, oh, it was probably a flare. Oh, it was probably lens artifact. And, he's a smart guy. He said, no, it wasn't. The same thing can be seen again in a trio in a triangle shape in a film that was made of the module docking. It can be seen from two separate films on two different cameras. So, not a glitch. And Ross saw these pictures. They showed him. Spaceman showed him. It seems absurd that this high-resolution digitized imagery of the NASA film has been available for decades, and yet no one has ever queried the source of these strange blue lights. Mitchell said, there's nothing to gain and a lot to lose by publicly revealing it. He couldn't prove that they were aliens, so he could say, I have not seen a UFO. But if you define UFO as alien, but it's just unidentified, and he has seen unidentified stuff. But he claimed to friends that he sure saw some very inexplicable things, and they weren't a technological glitch, and he saw them with his own eyes. Astronauts are under an obligation of secrecy to not disclose anomalous sightings. He said he had to deny it or be charged with treason. The spaceman told other stories from other astronauts. For example, Al Worden, Apollo 15, who died in 2020, was in orbit 3 days, went around the moon 74 times, and saw lights inside the craters of the moon. He believed that humans were originally aliens from somewhere else. This is a NASA astronaut. This was somebody who was cleared to do this extremely sensitive job for his stability and his scientific knowledge and his reliability and his calm under pressure. And he's seeing lights in the crater of the moon. And he believes humans were originally aliens from somewhere else. Mitchell knew that NASA would publicly laugh it off and he would risk treason if he spoke. But he told his friends. And when his sister died, Mitchell's sister died, she had a son, and Mitchell took him in. His name was Mitch Harkins. And when he died, he bequeathed his files, his research files, to Harkins. And Harkins passed them on to the friend Spaceman. Harkins was a biker and wasn't really all that interested, but he knew that Mitchell's close friend Spaceman was. So he gave them all these things and unfortunately died in a motorcycle crash in 2018. But eventually, after a lot of begging and whining and carrying on, Ross finally convinced Spaceman to let him look at the files. For example, and there was so much stuff, he saw a 1996 letter from the Department of Defense scientist from the Weapons Sciences Department, written to an LA show producer for Linda Moulton Howe and Art Bell, maybe, Ross asks, about testing on artifacts from Art's parts. So, the Roswell stuff that Tom DeLonge gave Art Bell passed on. The conclusion in the letter said, the unnamed scientist asserted in his report, I must emphasize that in my professional opinion, after thorough scientific testing, that the origin, manufacturing process, and function of the metal samplings are unknown. Preliminary conclusions are, when the part is placed in a large electric field, a lifting motion sideways to the electric field is observed. At this time, there are no known hypotheses that explain the observations. It sounds like the artifact actually levitated when he zapped it. So then it goes on to say, they protected the name of the scientist by deleting a lot of the information in the document. What it and other files reinforced for sure was that Ed Mitchell was a trusted confidant for many in the UFO community who were researching purported metamaterials and UFO crashes. There were numerous communications referring to famous events in ufology where the astronaut was let into ongoing investigations. And where am I here? They also revealed the Bigelow research secrets. He got to see Bigelow research secrets from the NIDS because Edgar was on the board. Edgar Mitchell was on the board. Stuff about the Skinwalker Ranch and other weird events in Utah and New Mexico, and a paper from Dr. Eric Davis, where he wrote matter-of-factly about how UFOs used mimicry techniques to hide their form. I told you to remember those 23 helicopters. Entering the atmosphere with either the look or the trajectory of a meteor, or hidden within a meteor shower, behaving like dark meteors without the associated optical signature, hiding with an artificial or natural cloud, behaving as pseudostars, sitting stationary over certain regions, or mimicking man-made artifacts' aggregate features. And then he refers to the story about the diamond-shaped object the women saw. They got out of their car, and when they looked up, it was followed by 23 helicopters. What they're saying here is this is a cover image, a masking of what's really going on, a manipulation of human perception. They discussed the 1980 Landrum Diamond UFO in Dayton, Texas, earlier in the book, and the 23 helicopters. The U.S. military denied this, but this Davis paper in Edgar Mitchell's files claims the helicopters were mimicry techniques, essentially screen memories, therefore manipulating human consciousness. And there's no real explanation for this. He found slides prepared for a senior official of the Department of Defense. They're found in Christopher Mellon's personal website from August 2018 from a guy called Anonymous from the Mind Sublime. He got a screenshot that said the slides were made for the Assistant Secretary of Defense. Is this why Senator Harry Reid asked for special access program protection for his investigation? They were uncovering things that were getting scary. Scary new, not scary dangerous. The slides reveal the Pentagon UFO Investigation Unit told the Department of Defense that mysterious craft were a game changer, and the U.S. military was powerless to do anything about it. One slide where am I here? I don't see what I was trying to talk about here. Okay, one of the slides shows Elizondo Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program privately advised the Defense Department that preliminary evidence indicates the U.S. is incapable of defending itself. The nature of these technologies, and we have no countermeasure, it's considered highly sensitive. And they want to investigate the full scope of the threat and their capabilities to be defeated or exploited. So many, including Stephen Greer, say the ETs are a threat. No, I'm sorry, I misread it. The ETs as a threat is a false narrative to scare people and to justify what the government's doing. But it's easy to see why the government and the military have the jitters. I mean, if they can control what you're seeing, your perception, your consciousness, and your mind, it's a Manchurian Candidate scenario. But there's no evidence except for the Tic Tac event that the whole U.S. Navy seems to be in on. And these slides are real. And the highest Department of Defense level people were told. The only question is it true? In 1997, Mitchell met with Greer and Admiral Wilson at the Pentagon and then wrote to Strom Thurmond in support of Philip Corso and his book, The Day After Roswell. Thurmond had I can't read my handwriting. He'd written the introduction, the foreword to Corso's book. And then he found out, because he really liked him, he knew him, and he really liked him. He said he was a man of great integrity. And then he found out what the book was about after the fact, and he freaked out, and he denied any kind of a UFO cover-up like Corso had talked about in the book. So Edgar's letter said that what Corso said in his book was true, including Whitley Strieber, who wrote a letter. And he was told in 1989 by the U.S. Army Brigadier General Arthur Exon, quote, completely unequivocally, there's been a cover-up about Roswell. There were retrieved craft, and Truman all the way down knew about it. Mitchell told Thurmond, and initially Thurmond was very skeptical, but then he saw reams of documents, and he spoke with military colleagues, and Thurmond began to change his mind. He says that the picture that emerges from thousands of hours of interviews and data analysis is there's been a systemic cover-up and a denial by the government of these matters of vital interest to all of us. Whatever rationale that existed 50 years ago for secrecy and denial has long since evaporated. And this is, Mitchell, too, which is quite a claim from one of America's greatest heroes. Chapter 21. Not made by human hands. In 2017, Wrigley, remember we talked about him, convinced the spaceman to let him look at the documents, and one was the Admiral Wilson memo. Now, this is notes of Dr. Eric Davis about the meeting with Admiral Wilson. If you remember, Wilson about lost his mind because he found out all these secrets were being kept from him and he was second in command. And this details what Wilson told Davis in a private 2002 meeting, and it proves a government UFO cover-up. Rigney talked to Grant Cameron, the Canadian researcher, at a conference in 2018, and they put a copy of this memo on the internet. Richard Dolan says it's the UFO leak of the century. Wilson did not comment for a whole year. Rumors of a New York Times story in 2020 were floating around, and Wilson, therefore, to get ahead of that, put out a strong denial. The spaceman says the memo was given to Davis's boss, Dr. Hal Puthoff, in late 2002, early 2003, and it wasn't just planted in Mitchell's file after the fact. The spaceman says, "I've no doubt this memo is real. It supports the Greer, Mitchell, Miller, Lovkin, and Adamiak claims of a meeting with Wilson at the Pentagon." And this would be April 97, about UFO cover-ups, the one that Wilson now denies. Confirms Wilson investigation and the leaking of the code names, and discovered a secret group working on alien technology and being blocked from investigating. Why would the DIA administrators be so candid with a stranger, even with top clearance? I mean, why would he even talk to them and have all of the people at the meeting claim the same conversation was had? The only one denying it is Wilson. "If you blow my trust, I'll deny meeting with you," the memo says, Wilson told Davis. Well, that's kind of what happened, isn't it? Ross told Wilson of the highest integrity and honesty. Ross was told that Wilson was of the highest integrity and honesty. Now he's denying everything. He took a long look, Ross did, at this memo. He says, Davis met Wilson in secret in a Vegas car park. Davis said the Bigelow NIDS guy was asserting government cover-ups. The meeting with Wilson was with a former top Department of Intelligence Agency officer who discovered the cover-up 5 years earlier. And the cover-up of Kraft in 1947 in Roswell and the back engineering. So all this information is being given to Wilson, and he's freaking out. Since 1997, the program was hidden from budget auditing in the Office of the Secretary of Defense for Acquisitions and Technology. About 400 to 800 people were read in. The Department of Defense, a private corporation. To me, this is like the crux of this whole thing. A private corporation, and they were secretly storing UFO, the private corporation, and they have recovered technological hardware, not of the earth and not made by human hands. Wilson denied this meeting and the content of the meeting. He said no access was denied to him because he didn't ask for it. He was never threatened. He never met the guy in Vegas in 2002. He claims that he was on leave in camp in Maine in 2002. But we know for sure that he was at the Pentagon in 1997, and he met those people at the Pentagon. He met them. Multiple witnesses confirm it, including Edgar Mitchell. Multiple witnesses said he claimed that he discovered a secret program. The memo says he repeated this to Davis in 2002, but now he denies it. If the document is a fake, the one from Davis, why is Davis in the aerospace classified government job that he's in, funded by top secret government research and development programs? If he's a liar about all this stuff, why are they keeping him on? If Davis's memo was fake, wouldn't he be stripped of his security clearance in a breach of ethics and fraudulent misinformation? The memo is 15 pages long, and it sounds like the transcript of a recording, and there is a rumor that Davis has an audio of this meeting. Davis hinted to the New York Post, and this was leaked from Mitchell, that no one can say, and no one is at liberty to say, because of security clearances. Dr. Hal Puthoff confirms that this memo is authentic, that the meeting happened. He confirmed the meeting with Wilson at the Pentagon by accident, in passing, in public. He accidentally let it slip, and then he tried to backpedal. There's no refuting the memo. Wilson claims to hardly know certain of these people, but when asked, they claim they've known him very well for years. They're shocked that he would say he didn't know them. The memo says that Wilson checked about the UFO files with 2 officers, and he named them, and they told him about special access programs, secret program with an aerospace technology contractor, and it's called a core secret. This is a government term for black programs that are so unacknowledged that to reveal they even exist would undermine military value. So they can't even pretend they actually exist. They don't deny them. They just act like they'd never heard of them. Wilson in the memo said that he found out who the contractor was and who the program manager were, and he confirmed this with 3 very top officials. He spoke with the program manager 3 times, and with the program manager, this is like a private corporation, aerospace guy, with the aerospace company security director and corporate attorney present. He demanded to be briefed in on this thing, to be read in, and the department, the deputy director of the DIA, he says, I deserve to be read in. I'm the one who briefs the Joint Chiefs of Staff and the president, and they hung up on him. How's that for a mind blower? He called in 2 days. They called him in 2 days and told him that they wouldn't talk with him about it on the phone. They wanted a face-to-face meeting. He was ushered into a private contractor's conference room in a secret vault. He met the watch committee, guardians is what they called themselves, the program director, the security director, and the lawyer. And they all acted confused about what he was talking about and what he wanted. They were testy, agitated, unpleasant, uncooperative. He was told that because of the near leak that happened, the private contractor was determined to control who in government would know about it. But there was no government oversight. This is illegal and politically dangerous. They didn't tell him the access criteria. They just denied him access. And no one in Congress, the White House, or the president, nobody knows. This is illegal. For Ross, the red flag is that Wilson was told no, but then they went on to give him details of reverse engineering, alien technology, not of this earth and not man-made. So they contradicted themselves. No, there's nothing. Let me tell you about nothing. And he was told by the Undersecretary of Defense that UFOs are real. And alien abductions are not real. And that guy, the Undersecretary of Defense, died in 2018. This is a red flag. The contractor, the private company, the aerospace company, admitted to him this stuff. So why tell him anything? Damage control? Tell him a little, downplay it, and then when you have success with the technology, it'll look less weird. Back in Washington, D.C., he complained and his job was threatened. And this is all in a different memo. He was told, drop it, forget it. He was threatened that he wouldn't get any future promotions in the DIA. He'd be forced into early retirement. He would lose his rank. Really angry. In a letter to Ross, he later denied all this, but there is a memo where he confirmed all of it before. All officials named in the memo deny everything. Authenticity is impossible to resolve. Either it's a hoax and it's very clever, or it's true and it strains credulity. Ross has a brilliant UFO research friend that he calls Cranium. And Cranium, asserts a cover-up. Puthoff and Davis do not deny the memo, but they can't talk and nothing's been proven. Still, the memo is the ultimate smoking gun. And it's an atrocity that a private corporation is keeping this important technological secret. Well, right? In the memo, if it's true, it's just Davis's claims and it proves nothing. So if it's true, all it is claims from Davis. There's no proof. Wilson denies everything. Ross has been trying to find someone willing to talk, and he's been using real mail with stamps and everything because he didn't want to leave an electronic trail. So now we have Chapter 22, Gordon Novel, Fact or Fiction. In 2020, he spoke with the Director of Science and Technology Development for the U.S. Navy for 30 years. And his attitude, this man's attitude, is, what are they going to do to me? Ross contacted him about Gordon Novel, who was a private investigator and a CIA spook who died in 2012. But in 2018, there was a book that was written about alien reproductive vehicle fluxliners. These are copies of alien vehicles. And in 2001, an aerospace illustrator, Mac McCandless, told Disclosure Project hearing National Press Club people that the U.S. government was back engineering UFOs from Roswell. That would be these alien reproduction vehicles, like the Fluxliner, and that they've made 3 of them. And Novel, this guy Novel, the spy guy, claimed to be in touch with, in the book, this whole book is like a thinly veiled reality, is the point that they're making here. He wrote this fictional book, but it's all about his experiences in this area of back technology from aliens. He worked with a guy called Wally Katz. And so, let's see here. Ross had met this man, Nat Kobitz, and he said, boy, this sounds really familiar. Is this his alter ego in the book? He's hiding his name. He knew all this Koblitz guy, and he let some information slip to Gordon Novel of how they back engineered alien ships, and Ross had a CIA contact who vouched for Novel and said he was weird, very odd, but essentially true. So as the United States Navy science officer, Katz told Novel that he would fund Puthoff's zero-point energy research and development and show them how to do it, but the alien copies of vehicles with anti-gravity, he wouldn't, because it was the #1 national security secret. So you got this weird private eye spy guy, CIA guy, making nice with an engineer working on alien back engineering. And Nat Koblitz, the engineer, tells him a little bit, ends up in his book, and Ross tracks him down. So he says Novel was a real guy, but was he a con man? He's like a guy from a spy novel. He was involved, and this has all been proven. This is just a mind blower. Involved in the Bay of Pigs. He knew Jim Garrison of the JFK investigation. He knew Oswald. He knew Ruby. And in his book, he named 2 real people, but he used fake names. And he said that his son was at these meetings at the Pentagon. Ross found the son, tracked him down, and said that the son said that his dad was involved in all kinds of conspiracies all around the globe, around the time of Kennedy, around the time of Watergate. His son knew all sorts of details and names that Ross was able to confirm. He remembered a meeting at the Pentagon with his dad, and he ID'd Kobitz. He was there. The son did. And he confirmed a drawing of the Fluxliner that came from this Novel guy. And the fact that some at the meeting knew that it was real, not a hoax and not a joke. The son thinks the government has anti-gravity, is what he thinks. He confirmed that his dad had a storage unit full of tapes and documents. Ross had a brief fantasy of unveiling all the secrets, but the son said that his dad was broke and couldn't pay the bill, and the unit was emptied and trashed by the storage business. Damn. The son claims that many CIA people were involved in this, and many of them were wiped out, is the term he used, and his dad was given legal problems. They created legal problems to shut his father up. Then, Ross got a call from 92-year-old Nat Koblitz. And this is great conversation. He told Ross that he knew he was dying and he would love to talk, and he told all about his research and development work. He was a Navy Defense Aerospace legend. He was honored, distinguished service, worked on space programs, Navy ships, submarines, lunar orbiters. He described the prototype drone that he helped to invent. He worked on anti-gravity and field propulsion techniques. He didn't think the U.S. had it yet. In 93, he confirmed the Pentagon meeting with Novel and the Sun remembered, with the flux liner. And he said, oh, yeah, Ross showed him the picture, and he went, oh, yeah, that rings a bell. Later, Ross sent the drawing, and he knew immediately, that this was not a hoax. Ross realized that Nat had a secret, but he expected Ross to ask the right question. He wasn't going to volunteer, but he would answer. Ross' question was there a program from the government with crashed UFOs? And he answered, yes, but I can't talk about it. Ross said, are any alien craft recovered by the U.S. government? And his answer was, only hearsay. I'm bound by an oath. He asked the question, what have you heard? And he said, well, I heard we recovered several UFOs in Roswell. They weren't weather balloons. And nobody knows about the ETs, the space people. And Ross asks, can you confirm the government is trying to back engineer technology? And his answer was, yes. They talked several long times for over 3 weeks. He wouldn't break his oath, but because he was dying soon, he talked about other UFO incidents. He told about, for example, Navy and civilian pilots both seeing the same UFO. They both saw them slightly differently, but at the same time from different vantage points, and they were not moving in a fashion consistent with Newtonian physics. In 94, he retired from the Navy and became a private consultant with an electron beam welding company. He describes it. Don't even ask. If you want to know, get the book, because I couldn't figure out. He was invited to Wright-Patterson to examine strange metal that was taken from Roswell under high security. Ross knew that the Roswell debris was at Wright-Patterson. Koblitz changed the subject. UFO Secrets in 2019 was a book written by Carrie and Schmidt. It's called Inside Wright-Patterson. It alleges huge underground facilities under Wright-Patterson and retrieved debris with UFO wreckage. In 94, Goldwater told Larry King that Curtis LeMay, who was his friend, made a confession to him. What page was that? Oh, okay. I think at Wright-Patterson, if you could get into certain places, you'd find out what the Air Force and the government does not know about UFOs. Reportedly, this is what Goldwater was telling Larry King from Curtis LeMay, a spaceship landed. It was all hushed up. I called Curtis LeMay and said, General, I know we have a room at Wright-Patterson where you put all this stuff. Can I go in there? I've never heard LeMay get mad, but he got madder than hell at me and said, don't ever ask me that question again. Goldwater was a very senior senator on the Armed Services Committee, the Aeronautical and Space Sciences Committee, and a former chairman of the Senate Intelligence Committee. As a member of the so-called Gang of Eight in Congress, he was cleared to know America's most sensitive secrets. Goldwater was also a close friend of Air Force General William Butch Blanchard, who, as colonel in 47, was the commanding officer at the Roswell Army Airfield when the supposed Roswell UFO crash happened. Goldwater knew several people with direct knowledge of what actually happened at Roswell. After World War II, the U.S. reversed Nazi rockets and aircraft, and Ross asked Koblitz. There was a lot of foreign technology at Wright-Patterson and a lot of really foreign technology. He asked Koblitz, "What did you see?" And he said, he described weird metal pieces of craft, unknown methods of manufacture. It goes into quite a lot of detail, but it's boring metallic, how it was bound together stuff, so I just skipped it. And Ross says, "Well, was it extraterrestrial?" And his response was, the last conversation they had, he died soon after, but he had introduced Ross to a retired associate who is called Sidewinder, who told a story of a guy who told him a secret UFO program existed on the campus of a Long Beach aerospace firm. This guy told Sidewinder, who told Ross, that he was offered a job with craft and the ETs, but that he would have to have a fake office at a certain business area with a fake secretary because the work he would be doing would be at a secret place. No one, not in the inner circle, knows about this. Ross spoke with a number of anonymous insiders. He said it was astonishing that the U.S. Air Force has alien technology. Stories, for example, of Mitchell and Wilson's memo, Private Aerospace Corporation is in control of all of this. Hidden in the Department of Energy, that's how they covered it up until 1977, when it became a federal agency and subject to congressional oversight. The Air Force then took over, and the U.S. Navy wouldn't be able to explain the Tic Tac thing because the Air Force knew about it, and the Navy was really mad they were out of the loop. Shockingly, similar assertions have been made from a variety of former inner senior government scientists, and however, nobody has proof. Is this science fiction? And then he goes, right, ... Let's see here. I think I might be able to finish this right now, so I'm going to go a little long. Chapter 23, Dr. Salvatore Pais Puzzling Patents. 2015, gravity waves were predicted by Einstein in 1916 and seen for the first time in 2015. And there's a whole lengthy physics explanation. Forget about it. One of the most momentous discoveries of the 21st century, and I will just take their word for that, he won the Nobel Prize in 2017. There's very little understanding of gravity since Newton discovered it in 1687. Well, described it in 1687. However, 8 weeks after gravity waves were discovered, the U.S. Navy aerospace engineer Salvatore Pais filed for a patent for spacecrafts driven by gravity waves. 8 weeks. He got the patent without peer review. The U.S. Navy vouched for him. And the plans very closely resemble a triangular UFO. He claimed a new propulsion system that could generate just discovered gravity waves. And his U.S. Navy boss claimed that soon there would be a reality, and he worked for the U.S. Navy in Maryland and applied for 4 bizarre patents over a 3-year period using gravitational waves. And this means the U.S. Navy is developing anti-gravity craft. The craft are like triangular UFOs, and the generator part looks astoundingly like the Tic Tac object. However, no waves were detected by observatory sensors when that Tic Tac thing was observed. Did he get the idea from alien tech? It includes faster than the speed of light movement and explains it, and has to do with massless particles, and it's quantum field stuff. Let's just take it on faith. DeLong's group and the Skunk Works claimed the same sort of thing, and Dr. Puthoff all supported it. Pais claims that he has room temperature superconductivity, which is the holy grail of modern physics. It would revolutionize, I guess, because in order to get superconductivity, it has to be kept at a low temperature. It makes it very difficult. This would revolutionize transport and space travel. And in parentheses, I don't understand anything about this explanation, but okay. So, did Navy pilots witness the test flights of a Tic Tac hybrid air and water invention, back engineered from alien technology? He's saying that they told him that it's in a plasma bubble, which is how it can go from air to space to water. Mellon denied it. He said, I could be wrong, but the rumor is the Navy applied for patents to block China and Russia getting patents in the future. He did claim that room temperature semiconductors and high-energy electromagnetic field generators were both operable. Top science in the U.S. Navy guys appealed and said it worked, and they didn't okay the patent. So I don't know. But they okayed the patent for a craft that needs that technology. So they're okaying the craft, but not the actual technology itself. It's weird. And they also okayed a patent for a fusion reactor. He was accused of invented jargon. There was no evidence of anything. That this is all theoretical. Nick Cook, 20 years ago, wrote a book called The Hunt for Zero Point, which is anti-gravity. And it seems that anti-gravity was coming in the 1950s, but then all of a sudden it seemed to disappear off the radar, pardon the pun. It was a breakthrough, maybe, by former Nazi scientists, and then it was kept in secret. Just a question. Ross says there are so many leads, but they all fade into secrets. Why? Cook today says the Navy now is talking about UFOs openly, and some of it is real. Did the U.S. crack the secret of anti-gravity? Nobody knows. There's a kernel of truth that exists, and if it's true, this kernel of truth, it's the most amazing story ever and the most amazing period in human history. And Ross has asked Koblitz about it, asked him to look into PACE, and when he asked him, he said Koblitz refused to give him any information and got very quiet. Mellon says what our pilots are seeing are not U.S. secret stuff. Ross says anti-gravity research went dark in the 50s, but nothing is stopping the secret effort that's underway. So they're still researching is what he's saying. They're just not talking. In 2020, Scientific American, now this is big, said UFOs are a scientific interesting problem. Let curiosity be the spearhead of understanding the phenomena. And Scientific American cautions outright dismissal. That's mind-blowing. The New York Times' Ralph Blumenthal made a very cryptic comment that the U.S. has alien material. He wrote an article with Leslie Kean, and he believes that these allegations have substance and are a classified subject, and therefore, because they're classified, they're extremely hard to investigate. Trump implied he knew. Well, Senate Intelligence Committee is looking. Ross has no doubt that the government is hiding UFO secrets. Is it technology? Is it craft? Is it bodies? Dr. Davis said, UFOs are seen, and they're not of this earth. Something is doing things, and they're doing things we can't do. Humans can't do. Tom DeLonge's many claims were corroborated by leaked DNC emails, ironically. He did meet with top officials. Did they lie to him? Did they manipulate him? Or was this and the PACE patents an attempt to scare off rivals from other countries? Ross focuses on Nat Koblitz. He said he was honorable, clear-headed, knowledgeable, and not the kind of person that was loose with the truth. And so finally, there's this. As incredible as it feels to write this, I strongly suspect from what my own sources tell me that technology not made by human hands has been recovered not only by the US, but by Russia and China. I venture the US has been wrestling for years with how to break this shocking news to the public, not least because it has flatly lied to its citizens for 75 years and criminally persecuted those who threatened the big secret. Too many insiders have dropped too many hints for me not to think that there's a reckoning coming. I suspect the quest to unravel one of humanity's greatest mysteries will very soon have the beginnings of an answer. Now, that's the end of this book, and apparently there's a new edition coming out in September with updates. We know that we have this huge whistleblower, and Congress is investigating right now. I will follow up, but it's not going to be this week. But I will follow up. I need the time to sit down and do the research. But in the meantime, that's the end of our book, In Plain Sight. Thank you for bearing with me. I'm sorry it's all divided up over days. And I think we made it under the wire with my space on my machine here. And thank you very much for watching. And how mind-blowing is all of this? So, thanks for watching. Slán go fóill, slánte.